What's up, you guys? Sean Ross Sapp, managing editor, FightfulWrestling.com, pleading with the Sasha Banks stands to leave us a thumbs up and be gentle. She may want out of WWE. Days of speculation followed her cancellation of her Wendy Williams show appearance, with Wendy Williams and her staff supposedly being outraged. Now, this is a story that we've heard about over the last couple of days. It's been discussed within Fightful for a few days. It's mentioned on Tuesday that this was something worth monitoring. Wrestling Observer has finally reported that Sasha Banks wants to leave WWE, or at least did over this past weekend. She's on vacation with her husband, Kalisto, and Kalisto's wife right now, but Fightful has corroborated this story with some additional details, rather. Observer stated that Sasha Banks was under the impression that she and Bayley would have the opportunity to have a strong run with the WWE women's tag team titles in an effort to establish them as serious champions and the titles as serious championships. However, they were defeated by the Iconics this week in a decision that was made pretty late. It was reported that Banks was given a few weeks to think things over before making what the company figured was a rash decision, but Fightful sources throughout the week had compared it to the Revival. In January, that team had expressed their frustration backstage and were asked to ride it out for a certain amount of time before they made this decision and were dead set on perhaps leaving. So WWE is hopeful that she will stick around. Sources that we spoke to within the company said they'd be surprised if Banks was granted a release. But Bayley, we were told, was a little bit frustrated too. But she ended up working on Monday. In addition, there was also talk about Monday of Alexa Bliss gaining the upper hand on both Banks and Bayley physically on Raw, which had been reported throughout the week. However, I'm not told if this was due to in a match, in a handicap match, or just maybe a physical altercation between the two, but they ended up going back and forth on social media as a result. Now, I cannot underscore this enough. Sasha Banks has what I would argue is maybe the most devoted fan base in WWE. And when I say devoted, I don't necessarily mean biggest, but I mean most loyal. I mean loudest. I mean most devoted. Like, if you put something about Sasha Banks out there on Twitter, a whole group of people is going to find it. Like, so it really remains to be seen. Would that group follow Sasha Banks to wherever she went? Assuming she would even go anywhere. Assuming that she would continue wrestling. I mean, we know of her love of pro wrestling, and she's spoken about her motivation in that regard, but she had her entire 2018 virtually wasted. I don't think that even goes to opinion. I think that's pretty objective at this point, that she and Bayley were set for a WrestleMania 34 match. They could have had that match. A lot of people assumed that was being extended until SummerSlam, then they'd do it. Well, that didn't happen. Well, a lot of people said, well, it's so they can launch the tag titles. Well, WWE had those prepared and ready to go and decided to sit on their hands with it until February of this year. Pretty wild. Now, it's worth mentioning. Road Dogg stepped down as the head writer of SmackDown. There were 2 referees that were fined this week. There have been other employees who have been let go this week. R.D. Evans, a writer, quit on the spot at the Hall of Fame. There are a lot of reports that he was released. He actually heard that Vince McMahon was upset, walked into Gorilla, shook his hand, and quit, from what I understand. There is a lot of frustration brewing within WWE in that regard. We've heard of Mike and Maria Kanellis in December, roughly, maybe early January, asking for their releases. Hideo Itami asked for his release. You had the Revival in whatever situation that it was, whether it be expressing their frustration or asking for a release. There's been a lot of turnover. As a result, they've hired the likes of Bruce Pritchard, Abyss, Sanjay Dutt, Shane Helms. They've brought in a whole lot of people, Sean Daivari. They brought in a lot of people to work in this company and do any variety of things. So there are going to be a lot of chips that fall in regards to not just this, but any number of situations that emerge. And Sasha Banks is, a top of the line wrestler. She can go in the ring. She can go as a single. She can go as a tag team wrestler. And when those titles were established, and it was established you can compete on multiple brands, you figured they would implement or really, really ride with that and maximize that. Now, it's easy for people to say a lot of things. It's easy for people to say, oh, it's fake wrestling. Why get frustrated? Oh, actors quit because of the creative direction of shows all the time. How many times do you hear about showrunners or actors or producers or directors going out of a project because they don't agree with the direction of it? It happens all the time. The only difference is there's a new project all the time. In wrestling, there are not as many options. Now, for Sasha Banks, there are a lot of options. The people that I spoke to within WWE this week didn't seem to think that Sasha Banks would be granted her release. It would have to be more like a Neville situation. That's just speculation. That's hardly a fact. That's pure speculation. But there are situations where that has been waived, where that has been kind of let go in some sense. But AEW surely would want her. Impact Wrestling surely would want her. You want to talk about a company that needs Sasha Banks? Ring of Honor needs Sasha Banks. They need somebody. They need a marquee name atop their Women of Honor division. Impact Wrestling should probably just build their entire company around their women's division as good as it is. And having that name attached to it probably wouldn't hurt either. But AEW, if you want somebody, I mean, hey, I like Britt Baker. I like a lot of the people that they have, but we're talking like a real marquee women's wrestling name here that if this ends up happening the way that at least she wanted it this weekend, man, that'd be wild. Now, we've spoke at length on our post-show podcast. WWE just has, quite frankly, been lazy. I don't know how anybody could watch the show and not assume that either they had been lazy or been forced to rewrite. Now, I would say assume that they were lazy because you never know what happens. We talk about it all the time. We talked to Kazim Famuyade recently, who was on the writing team, and talked about how changes happen all the way up to the show. Plans change is something that people use as like a joke towards people who cover wrestling, but plans do change. Literally, the match order of WrestleMania changed while the show was going on. The pre-show had already started. And this wasn't the only, these aren't the only people. Pat McAfee spoke openly this week about how he almost quit on the spot because of Michael Cole yelling at him. Alex Del Barrio, who was an announcer for about 6 months, then took to Twitter and said that there is a foster or an environment that has been fostered within that company where if you don't do everything their way, you'll get yelled at it for it. The only difference is Pat McAfee turned around and said, "Nah, piss off, mates." And they liked it. It's the old adage of punching Vince McMahon in the mouth, and he likes it. Only it applied to somebody else. It was reported this week that Road Dogg stepped down because of the constant changes to the show. I was told that there was heavy pushback for both the Raw and SmackDown main events, with Raw seeing Seth Rollins and Kofi Kingston morph into a match against the Bar. Now, we saw how the crowd reacted to that. There were many people backstage who tried to influence that decision to not happen because they knew it was going to get crapped on. Tuesday night, Drew McIntyre was put into the main event of the show and then was told to walk out in the middle of it to distance himself from losing. Why'd you book it, mate? So it's a lot of people are saying, oh, Sasha Banks is always complaining. Sasha Banks is this. Sasha Banks is that. Hey, if you don't like your spot, voice your concern. That's what she did. Now, I don't know the exact terminology in how that was relayed, but man, this has been the talk since about Tuesday in the DMs. This has been something that I've been trying to confirm for a while, and Meltzer was able to confirm it with, he said, at least one WWE higher up. Man, it's wild. And, a lot of these people worked 5-6 days in a row. There are some who came off of WrestleMania weekend, had to fly out for NXT and do the tapings on Wednesday. It's been a stressful week. It's been a wild week. Reminder, guys, leave us a thumbs up. That really helps. We do podcasts after Raw, after SmackDown, after every pay-per-view. But FightfulWrestling.com is where to go. My news team does a great job. If you all want to support Fightful directly, FightfulSelect.com is our premium service. We do extra podcasts. I do breaking exclusive news over there. I give you all early access. You all do a Q&A with me where you can ask as many questions as you want every other week. We do retro reviews. We have NXT 205 Live, UK reviews, lots of that stuff. Fightfulselect.com. That's where you can support us most directly. I guess if anybody's in the live chat and wants to submit some questions, I'll answer those kind of as a preview of our Fightful Select Q&A show. If I don't know the answer, I will be very transparent in telling you guys that it's the answer. And normally I go a couple minutes on these breaking news videos, but I got to take care of the Sasha Banks stands. My God, they make up a good portion of our audience. So I don't want to incur the wrath of those people. I would lead an army of Sasha Banks stands against any country in the world, to be honest with you. Somebody says, if it was another team besides the Iconics, would Sasha bitch? Probably. I mean, I get that's my speculation. I can't speak for Sasha Banks, but I imagine that they wanted to establish those championships themselves. And they weren't put in that position to do so. JB says, the best always complain. Stone Cold, HBK, CM Punk. Complaining means you know your worth. I agree with that, man. I agree with that completely. You don't want someone to be a complete yes man. You want a little bit of pushback. Any news on McIntyre? I updated that earlier. Don't we say wrestlers need to stand up for themselves? But when they do, people call out complaining or bitching. What do you want? I agree. I'm with you guys. Leave us a thumbs up. Subscribe.